Hi friends, today we are going to learn about explain what is routing in MVC. What are the three segments for routing important? Routing in ASP.NET MVC is the mechanism that helps map incoming request URLs to specific controller actions. When a user makes a request typically to a URL, the routing system determines which controller and action method should handle that request. The routing system is defined using a set of URL patterns called routes that indicate how incoming URLs are matched to control and action in your MVC application. How routing works in ASP.NET MVC. When a user makes a request, such as navigating to a page in the browser, the routing engine takes the URL, sorry, breaks it down into its components and use these components to find the correct controller and action. The result is the correct action method within the appropriate controller gets executed. For example, a request like /home/index/ would map to the index action of home controller. Key concepts in MVC routing. Route table. The route table in ASP.NET MVC is a collection of routes that define how URLs are matched to controllers and action. By default, a route is configured in routeconfig.cs file and under the app start folder. Routes are defined using patterns that specify placeholders for dynamic parts of the URL. Example, controller action parameters. URL pattern. A URL pattern consists of placeholders for the controller action and parameters. For example, controller name /action name /id is a common pattern where the controller name is mapped to the controller, action name is mapped to the method, and id is a parameter. Route constraints. Route constraints are used to specify rules for the parameter in a URL pattern. Example, ensuring a parameter is a number or a string or a follow some other format. Default values. You can define default values for certain parts of the URL in case they are not provided in the request. The routing process. The incoming URL is matched against the route patterns defined in the route table. If a match is found, the route system identifies the corresponding controller and action. The controller's action is executed and a result, typically a view or a data, is returned to the client. Sorry. The three important segments in routing. When you define a route, there are three key segments that help define the URL structure in the routing system. The first one is controller. The first segments in the URL represents the controller. It maps to a controller class in your MVC application. A controller is a C# class that contains action methods responsible for handling requests. Example, /home is a controller and /index is a action method. The home segment refers to the home controller class. Action. The second segment in the URL represents the action. It maps to the action method inside the specified controller. An action method is a method in the controller that processes the request, performs any necessary operations, and returns a result, usually a view or some data. Example, /home is a controller and /index is a action method. The index segment corresponds to the index action method in the home controller. Now the third one is parameter. The third segment and potentially additional segment represents the parameters or query parameters passed to the action method. These parameters provide a data to the action method that needs to execute its logic, example, an ID value, search criteria, etc. Example is slash product slash details. This is the parameter. The 5 is passed as ID parameter to the details action method in the product controller. Example of routing in ASP.NET MVC. By default, ASP.NET MVC defines a route pattern in routeconfig.cs similar to, see, look at here, we have a route.map route. See, for default route, we have given a like this with anonymous method, new controller equal to, we have assigned home controller, action we have assigned with action index method, ID, URL parameter dot optional. See here, controller, this is the first part of the URL, home in home slash index. Action, this is the second part of the URL, index in slash home index. ID, this is the optional parameter that is passed to the action. 5 in products details 5. This route maps URLs to controller action, allow you to access URLs. Slash home index home controller index action method. Product details 5 product controller details action with ID parameter of 5. Customizing routes. You can customizing route patterns to meet the needs of your application. For example, if you want to include additional segments or apply constraints to your routes, you can modify the map route method to reflect the new pattern. Example of custom route. So previously default one is different, now we have created for our own custom. So the default one is controller, we have previously it was home controller, now we have changed to products, and actions is a details action method, ID is a URL parameter dot optional. Constraints, new, it's a category we have given, this is a constraint. In this custom route, the URL pattern is product slash category slash ID. The category parameter must match the regex alphanumeric characters. If the ID is not provided, it defaults to null. So URLs like products electronics 10 would map to product controller details action with the category electronics and ID equal to 10. Products furniture would map to product controller details action with category furniture and ID equal to null. Route configuration and execution flow. Route registration. Routes are registered in routeconfig.cs file using map route method. The route registration happens at the application startup in the application start method. Route matching. When a request is made, the routing engine compares the URL with the patterns defined in the route table. The first matching route is chosen and the corresponding controller and action are executed. Default values and optional parameters. If the URL is missing some segments slash home slash index without a controller, the routing system uses default values to handle the request. Conclusion. Routing is a critical feature in ASP.NET MVC that determines how URL maps to the controller and action methods. The three segments of routing are controller, the controller class that handles the request, action, the method in the controller that handles the request, parameters, the value passed to the action method for processing. So friends, this is all about routing in ASP.NET MVC. Thank you.